And good evening, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And wow, tonight we're going to have a part two of our exploration into the Fabian Society and its relationship to various institutions that exist today and that really do cast quite a shadow upon our lives when you take in the idea behind the Fabian Society, and that is that they are wolves in sheep's clothing, and they are using deception. They are sneaking up to us with false flag attacks. They are taking us down. But they're doing it like the turtle in the tortoise versus the hare race. The turtle is going to go slow, but he's going to win the race. That's the Fabian method. We attack with guerrilla tactics. In other words, it's the special forces that are going to win for us. We're no longer going to try to win by brute force of million-man armies. No, we're going to use our special forces, our guerrilla tactics. And you know what that means? That means, well, morality, empathy, the golden rule, those become rather quaint and are actually laughable to people who have adopted the plan of the Fabian Society, who are going to take over the world and enslave everybody else. That is their plan. And fortunately, we have enough records to know that that's really is. They say it themselves. And George Bernard Shaw, the famous playwright, was the core of the foundation of the Fabian Society. If you haven't seen it yet, please do check out my just previous Mindfields episode, McDuff's Mindfields number 121, in which we played some selections from a couple of very good YouTube presentations. One by TruthStream Media that I think is really the best one. It tied the London School of Economics directly to the Fabian Society. And now you can actually read about it if you go to London School of Economics Wikipedia page, and it says right there that it was founded by the Fabians. But you go in and you look at that window and you understand what they're talking about. They're talking about using a metaphorical hammer to shape the world in the way that pleases them, the image that pleases them. That is the goal. So these folks, they think they know better than God. And they think perhaps God made a whole lot of mistakes, but they're here, don't worry, to correct them. And if God happened to make some defective humans, well, they have a plan to get rid of them too. That's one of the great powers that the Fabians have by virtue of their being smarter than the rest of us. Hit the turtle in the eyes, Olivia. I agree with you. Where's my... Oh, well, the turtle got away tonight. I guess I can't reach him. Olivia's here, but I think the old turtle, he's probably crawled under a big rock somewhere. He's hiding from Olivia, the powerful osprey. There's that turtle. Andy just went and fetched him out of the swamp. Yeah, he just kind of sneaks along, he's going to take us over, but he's not going to let us know. He said, I'm just a turtle, man. Don't worry about me. I'm just a turtle. Why would you worry about a nice little turtle like me? And, of course, that's what he's going to do is he's going to just rise up. He's going to rise up and grab everything, but not if we can stop him. Not us. We're not going to let it happen. Right, Olivia? This is Olivia, and Olivia rules. See? You can't fight that. There you go. So, okay, bad Fabians and great screaming ospreys, because that's the whole core of this show is to be screaming ospreys, right? Protecting the nest, the subtitle of our effort here at screamingospreys.com. Protecting the nest, indeed. Well, thank you, Kathy Sue, and thank you for you sent me a couple of candles all the way across the country. I don't know how you kept them lit during the air flight, but really, they're looking good. And I think maybe we'll incorporate them into the show real soon. Well, we left off with me making a connection that I think is worth repeating, that of the economics team of Ralph Harris and I think his first name is Arthur Selden, Seldon, to the books of Isaac Asimov in the Foundation trilogy. Because this Foundation trilogy is based on something called the Selden Plan. And I've gone to the fandom page of the Foundation series and going to read a little paragraph about the Selden Plan, Seldon, because as I told you the last time, this is clearly a reference to Harris and Selden. The guy's name is Harry, Hari, Selden. The Selden Plan this is science fiction by Asimov. The Selden Plan refers to the plan engineered by Harry Selden, Hugo Amari, Wanda Selden, and others at the Psychohistorical Project to shorten a projected 30,000 years of chaos and war following the inevitable collapse of the Galactic Empire to a mere 1,000 years, leading to the establishment of a second empire, one whose survival and prosperity is assured by psychohistory. Psychohistory is a scientific theory created by Harry Selden that can be used to predict the actions of human beings in large social groups. The Psychohistorical Project was created by Emperor Cleon in prelude to Foundation in hopes of preventing the empire from falling. But Selden knew this was impossible. He and others realized that it was possible to use psychohistory to predict the effects of changes made to the political fabric of the empire. Using psychohistorical prediction, Selden and others fashioned a plan. The particulars of the plan are never delved into outside of the book Foundation, but we do know that the plan involves the two foundations. The first foundation is the bastion of physical science and political order, while the second foundation is a covert group of people hidden away who are experts in mentalics and psychohistorical prediction. While not much about the plan is ever given, Asimov makes clear the fact that Selden anticipated every development of the Foundation up until the arrival of the mule. Although the Selden Plan cannot anticipate mutants like the mule, the second foundation exists to keep the plan on track. Even it, however, can compete with the master mentalics of Gaia. And so that's the summary that you get from the fandom page of the Selden Plan, the Harry Selden Plan. Pardon me. Harris and Selden were the two principals of the London School of Economics. And the London School of Economics, as we have shown, is a Fabian founded and financed institution. So with all the famous people that go through there, the most famous people that have been involved there are two of the world's most famous economists. One of them is John Maynard Keynes, Keynes, and the other one is Von Hayek. Forget it, Friedrich, isn't it? Frederick Von Hayek. Yeah, Friedrich in German. Friedrich von Hayek. Okay? And there was a big battle between them at the London School of Economics. And what you can see, if you apply the logic that we've been learning from George Webb, is that these two are set up as the two extremes that are going to battle between each other, like the two pillars of Masonic tradition of Joachim and Boaz, right? And this is kind of like the political parties, where everybody has to be either red or blue. And these two extremes debate, and that becomes basically the whole battleground of economics. From the for the a priori understanding that, you know, the common people just need to be managed. It's either a question of, are you going to manage them this way or are you going to manage them that way? And there's a nice essay here, which I'm going to delve into now, which I think is very helpful in explaining things that, you know, you used to think that Keynes must be really, really smart. And all these economists are so smart that we can't possibly understand them. And and now I'm kind of thinking that these are yeah, there's a little bit of a sleight of hand going on there. As a title of this particular article gives us. This is by Matthew Ehret, Ehret. It's dated January 10th of 2021, so it's very current. And it's published in a publication called FRN, which I'm sure stands for something, the FRN Daily News Brief. And the article is entitled Keynes's Sleight of Hand, From Fabian Eugenicist to World Government High Priest. Now, I'm going to read a good bit of this article, and I invite you to just sit back and listen and soak it in, because it really does help so much in understanding things that have been so obscure. And even, I even took a course in economics when I was in college, but the stuff they teach is not anywhere near what's really going on. And I think the Fabian Society has defined the debate. Well, let's read some. It is as if the battle lines of civil war had been drawn up between masses of Americans who have been led to believe in either a false bottom-up approach to economics, as defined by the Austrian school represented by Frederick Von Hayek, or in the top-down approach of John Maynard Keynes. The former sacrifices the general welfare of the whole nation for the sake of the parts, that is, individual liberties, while the latter sacrifices the individual liberties of each citizen for the sake of the general welfare, parentheses, or at least some oligarch's definition of what that should be. So this is the basic idea, is that Hayek is your no government interference, let the chips fall where they may. The hidden hand of Adam Smith is going to define, who the winners and losers are, and we just need to just let it happen and stay out of it. That's how you get to an Irish Holocaust, for instance. Just stay out of it. Well, the opposite is that of John Maynard Keynes, who is basically saying that the government is always the answer. So it's the two extremes of the government is never the answer, which is Hayek, and the government is always the answer, which is John Maynard Keynes. And you can see the effect of a John Maynard Keynes policy in that the government is going to have a duty to borrow money to pay for social programs to fill in the holes where the individuals have fallen through the cracks. But they're not going to take care of everybody on an individual basis by respecting, say, the Bill of Rights. They're going to cut corners. They're going to use us as guinea pigs. And that is the one world socialism that is in our future, courtesy of the Fabian Society. We are getting bounced between these two extremes with no chance to have an application of common sense and reason to get to where most people understand the common ground is simple. The government is the answer when it is the answer, and it's not when it's not. And most people would say, government, stay out of my life, stay out of my business, except for when they're drowning, except for when they've been hit by a pandemic, for instance. Then you say, well, government help. We need some checks. We need some money. We need you to keep our economy going. Well, Keynes would help, but Hayek would say, no, we're not paying anything. You guys are just going to have to deal with this pandemic without any government assistance. Well, it's ridiculous. There's got to be a place in the middle where it makes sense. Some people think the word social democracy means that, but this is not on the table. You don't get that option. You either have to pick, all this way or all that way. Let's read a little more about John Maynard Keynes in this same article. And this talking about the American system is the same American system that was mentioned by Richard Freeman last Friday and Harley Schlanger and the LaRouche folks generally. So let's just let all of this stuff come together. In my last article, I introduced in broad strokes a history of the American system of political economy as advanced by Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Henry Clay, Henry Carey, Lincoln, and McKinley. We reviewed how it was derailed by McKinley's 1901 murder and was only revived 30 years later with Franklin Roosevelt's 1932 presidential victory, which put a stop to the 1933 bankers' dictatorship. Finally, we briefly explored how and why both John Maynard Keynes and Frederick Von Hayek, whose ideas so deeply influence the polarization of the United States today, not only despised FDR, but hated everything the Republic stood for. So you see, both of them hate the American plan, the American idea. Why is that? Well, London. In this second installment, we will shed light on the anti-human ideas and the political operations that shaped the mind, the life, and the politics of Lord John Maynard Keynes, whose dates are 1883 to 1946. All right, this next section is Keynes, the Fabian eugenicist. You never thought of him that way, did you? Didn't teach you that in high school economics. Although Keynes is heralded as the guiding light of the New Deal, and as such defended by modern Green New Dealers and Great Reset technocrats wishing to impose a top-down system of governance onto the world, the fact is that Keynes not only detested Franklin Roosevelt, but also humanity more in general. This will be seen clearly in his devotion to the theories of Thomas Malthus. Malthus, the Thomas Malthus by now, right? His promotion of eugenics as a science of racial purification and population control is a Nazi. And 3, his general devotion to world government as a leading member of the Fabian Society. From his earliest days at Cambridge, where he rose quickly to become one of the select Cambridge apostles and shared, among other things, a lifelong friendship with Lord Bertrand Russell, one of my least favorite people in history. That's my comment, sorry. Keynes devoted himself to the service of empire, becoming Knight of the Order of Bath and Order of Leopold by 1919. His early 1911 book on Indian currency and finance ignored all actual political reasons for the famines plaguing India and argued coldly for a greater integration of the Indian banking system into the City of London controls, which would somehow solve India's problems. The provable reality was that Indian famines were coordinated tools of population control by the Malthusian elite of the British establishment, who considered, quote, war, famine, and disease as the gifts nature gave the strong to manage the weak. There it is. People are evil and crazy and greedy beyond our comprehension. And these are the ones that are running the show behind the show. His early 1911, all right. While his later 1919 Consequences of the Peace book appeared to be reasonably sympathetic, warning that the draconian Versailles reparations would do incredible damage and lead to a new world war, in reality, Keynes was displaying a cold sleight of hand. Serving as British Treasury representative to the Versailles Conference, Keynes never opposed fascism. He merely argued that a more liberal pathway to global fascism could be established under the direction of the Bank of England. His opposition, though, to the more violent approach preferred by conservative imperialists among the British intelligentsia was one of form more than substance. Keynes and his fellow Fabians, H.G. Wells, Bertrand Russell, and George Bernard Shaw, preferred the quote, slow and steady, long game reminiscent of the Roman general Quintus Fabius, who famously fought his enemies by slow attrition rather than in full-scale confrontation. Due to the public's general ignorance of this strategy, we celebrate these Fabian Society luminaries for their pacifism, though in reality, they were just as racist, fascist, and eugenics-loving as their more short-sighted, hard-stomached counterparts, Sir Oswald Mosley, Lord Alfred Milner, and even Winston Churchill. Where the real solution to the hyperinflationary money printing and economic industrial shutdown of Germany during the post-World War I years was to be found in the German-Russian Rapallo Agreement, parentheses, destroyed with the assassination of American System Foreign Minister Walter Rathenau, Keynes and his ilk merely called for economic integration of the German banking and military system under Bank of England, League of Nations control. Malthus, eugenics, and Keynes. Two theories advanced by the British Empire in response to the growth of the American system, first in the USA and later internationally, were those of Thomas Malthus and of Francis Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin who coined the term eugenics in 1883. These sister concepts served as nothing less than religious precepts for the ruling elite, as it desperately reorganized itself in the late 19th century. It must be kept firmly in mind that at this period the British Empire was weak and incapable of stopping the electric spread of win-win cooperation as the American system was sped around the world, bringing progress and full-spectrum economics in its wake. One of the leading voices of the American system in 1890 was Colorado's first governor, William Gilpin, whose, quote, the Cosmopolitan Railway laid out a practical vision for a world united by rail, development, and national banking. And there you see on this article a map, which is the first time you see a transportation route that goes all the way across the continents around the world, crossing the Bering Strait and the North Atlantic. Nevertheless, the empire was determined to put an end to the spread of the American system. A new breed of think tanks was created to shape the empire's grand strategy in the face of this growth of independent sovereign nations. These were T.H. Huxley's X-Club, the Fabian Society, and the Round Table Group. Where Huxley's X-Club coordinated with Cambridge and the Round Table Group and Rhodes Trust interfaced with Oxford, the Fabian Society created a new school called the London School of Economics. All three worked together as one unit. Defining his misanthropic belief in overpopulation, Thomas Malthus, a British East India Company economist, stated in his famous 1799 essay on population, quote, the power of population is so superior to the power in the earth to produce subsistence for man that premature death must in some shape or other visit the human race. How could this crisis be avoided? Malthus answers it like only a devout imperialist could, quote, we should facilitate, instead of foolishly and vainly endeavoring to impede, the operations of nature in producing this mortality. And if we dread the too frequent visitation of the horrid form of famine, we should sedulously encourage the other forms of destruction which we compel nature to use. In our towns, we should make the streets narrower, crowd more people into the houses, and court the return of the plague. Thomas Malthus. Does that not resonate with the quotes from Prince Philip given us by our guests on Friday nights the past month? Yes, that is exactly what Prince Philip thinks, feels, and wants to do. Darwin himself admitted in his autobiography that his theory of evolution arose only after 1838, his reading of Malthus's essay on population, in which he got the theory by which to work. So Darwinism is really an extension of Malthus's Hobbesian social theories onto all of living nature, a mere struggle for survival in a universe of entropy and diminishing returns. After a Malthusian version of biology was created, Darwin's theories were in turn reapplied to human society as imperial tools for population control under the form of Galton's eugenics, thus giving the same old evil practices of empire, war, and slavery a scientific validation. Although some apologists considered Keynes an anti-Malthusian due to his theory that overpopulation might be overcome by encouraging spending rather than savings, which would in turn somehow create markets and thence new factories and more growth, the reality was the opposite. Keynes not only spoke gushingly of Malthus throughout his life as one of the great minds of all time, but even plagiarized many of Malthus's own theories. For instance, that of, quote, demand deficiency causing unemployment and recession, outlined in his 1930 treatise on money. Quote, let us think of Malthus today as the first of the Cambridge economists, as above all a great pioneer of the application of a frame of formal thinking to the complex confusion of the world of daily events. Malthus approached the central problems of economic theory by the best of all routes. In his May 2nd, 1914 lecture, Population, Keynes argued that government should, quote, mold law and custom deliberately to bring about that density of population where there ought to be, and that there would be more happiness in the world if the population of it were to be diminished. Saying that India, Egypt, and China are gravely overpopulated, Keynes advocated using violence to defend the, quote, superior white races in this struggle of survival, with the pacifist saying, quote, almost any measure seemed to me to be justified in order to protect our standard of life from injury at the hands of more prolific races. Some definite parceling out of the world may well become necessary, and I suppose that this may not improbably provoke racial wars. At any rate, such wars will be about a substantial issue. As the acting chair of the Neo-Malthusian League, Keynes stated in 1927, we of this society are Neo-Malthusians. I believe that for the future, the problem of population will emerge in the much greater problem of hereditary and eugenics. Quality must become the preoccupation. By 1946, Keynes, still a member of the British Eugenics Society, wrote in the Eugenics Review, quote, Galton's eccentric, skeptical, observing, flashing, cavalry leader type of mind led him eventually to become the founder of the most important, significant, and I would add genuine branch of sociology which exists, namely eugenics. By 1937, Keynes's general theory of employment was published in Nazi Germany. If anyone wishes to defend the idea that the economist was somehow an anti-fascist defender of liberal values, let them read his own words in the preface and then either redefine liberal values or their naive idea of Keynes. Quote, I may perhaps expect to find less resistance among German readers than among English ones when I put before them a theory of employment and production as a whole. The theory of production as a whole, which is the object of this book, can be much better adapted to the conditions of a totalitarian state than the theory of production and distribution of wealth under circumstances of free competition. Hitler himself was not only a devout eugenicist, whose racial purification policies emerged through the funding of the Rockefeller Carnegie Foundations, as well as the British establishment But he was also a devout Malthusian, saying, quote, "The day will certainly come when the whole of mankind will be forced to check the augmentation of the human species, because there will be no further possibility of adjusting the productivity of the soil to the perpetual increase in the population." Keynes was by this time extremely frustrated that the intention-driven system of political economy defining the New Deal under the helm of FDR's leadership was not absorbing his Trojan horse theories on employment, demand, and inflation. However, by the end of the war, many Council on Foreign Relations, CFR-affiliated operatives pushing Keynesianism were making successful inroads into all branches of U.S. bureaucracy and penetrated the highest levels of the State Department and Treasury. At one point in 1943, Franklin Roosevelt commented on his understanding of this British deep state operation, which he told his son Elliot, quote, "You know, any number of times the men in the State Department have tried to conceal messages to me, delay them, hold them up somehow, just because some of those career diplomats over there aren't in accord with the way they know I think. They should be working for Winston. As a matter of fact, a lot of the time they are working for Winston. Stop to think of them. Any number of them are convinced that the way for America to conduct its foreign policy is to find out what the British are doing and then copy that. I was told 6 years ago to clean out that State Department. It's like the British Foreign Office," unquote. Drain the swamp. All right. The next chapter, next part of this essay is called The Battle for Breton Woods. And I'm going to skip through that just because the idea of Bretton Woods was to fix the American dollar to gold and then fix the other currencies to the American dollar and to achieve stability across nations that way. It became twisted and used to the point that in 1971, they had really pretty much messed up by borrowing so much for the Vietnam War. And maybe they did it on purpose to cause the disaster that happened, which was the disaster of 1971, where Nixon, at the behest of George P. Shultz, took the United States off of the gold standard, no longer pegging the dollar to the gold. This frustrated the Europeans that wanted to get paid back in gold and let the dollar float as whatever it might be worth against other currencies. And of course, we've seen it float down and down and down and down to the point now where, a dollar buys what, a tenth of what it bought in Franklin Roosevelt's time, maybe even less. Well, this is Keynesian economics, to keep on printing money, to borrow money and keep on borrowing money. And as so many people have been saying to me, Garland Nixon last night, the dollar's going to crash. People keep saying that. I don't know if it's true or not, but it looks like it should crash, right? You've seen the way the curves go on the economic charts, where you see the rich get poorer, rich get richer and richer and richer, and the poor get poorer and poorer and poorer, and they diverge so much that the dollar, they could print so many dollars just to keep everybody's loans going that eventually it becomes hyperinflation, and the story about what happened in Germany. But the idea of Keynesian economics is that the government really does run the economy. And that is what's going on with the World Economic Forum, the Davos people, Klaus Schwab, and the Great Reset that they're trying to bring in on the heels of or under the cover of the COVID cover story crisis. And, isn't it interesting that it's just a little bit, like, they said, okay, 2 weeks, we're going to have a lot shut down, right? Well, it's 2 months, and 3 months, and a year, and now well, there's going to be another version, or it's going to be, it's going to, you know, get worse. It's going to need to stay another month and another couple of months, and then the Biden comes out and says, "Well, just stay in until May." And now May's coming, and they're saying, "Well, we're probably going to have to extend it." They're going to extend it until they can then convert it into a climate-based lockdown. While they're passing all of these rules and laws right now that have been pointed out to us, by Mike Billington and by Richard Black and by Richard Freeman and Paul Gallagher. These guys have been in this game a long time, and what they're saying is, right now, they're pulling the plug on American industry, on American power to generate our own economy. And this is going to be a disaster if we let them get away with it. Keynesian, Paul Krugman, he defends Keynes all the time. And no, we're at a point right now where the banks own us as long as we let them get away with it. How did they get here? Well, here's how they got here. They got here like this. They just kind of snuck right on in here. And, they decided to try to just eat us, I want to take your country down, just by a death of 1,000 cuts, if you want to put it that way. But with the assistance of false flag attacks, deception. Through deception, we will win. We are the wolves in sheep's clothing. So the Keynesian world emerged over FDR's dead body. Under the Keynesian takeover of Bretton Woods that emerged during the Anglo-American special relationship created by Truman and Churchill, transatlantic nations became increasingly dominated by bloated bureaucratic systems, while plans for genuine development were undermined. With Roosevelt dead by 1945, Harry Hopkins dead by 1946, Dexter White dead by 1948, and Henry Wallace's presidential efforts sabotaged by 1948, the last serious resistance to Britain's reconquest of the United States of America had been put down. After the war, eugenics-promoting organizations and think tanks changed their names while continuing their work, morphing into new forms by the 1960s, such as the environmental movement, transhumanist movement, while not even the pharmaceutical healthcare section was left untouched. And that's the end of that particular article. I also want to pay tribute to an author by the name of Robert Ingraham, who has written a book that I've just gotten, and it is the history, as you've heard it in various parts from people like Webster Tarpley and from Harley Schlanger and from the other books we've read. He's put together a book which I may decide to read to you about the history of that Venetian, Amsterdam, London transfer of the center of the banking system. So here he is in EIR writing an essay on John Maynard Keynes, our same villain here. This is November 9th, 2018. And I'm going to quote from EIR by Robert Ingraham, November 5th, 2018. In his 1921 work, Keynes asserts that knowable truth is impossible. The closest one can come to the truth is what he calls direct knowledge, which according to Keynes comes entirely from either the senses or experience. This is Descartes. This is the same idea of if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. Keynes is explicit that neither direct nor indirect knowledge represents the actual truth about anything. Therefore, one has to develop the means to determine what might be probable. The methods Keynes employs while intended to be intimidating to non-mathematicians, is in reality remarkably similar to that of the life insurance company, calculating the profit or loss of the imminent death of a client with an actuarial table. Keynes creates categories such as P, probable belief, primary proposition, A, the degree of probability, H, evidence on which we base our belief, and Q, what we know, secondary proposition, all of which are designed to lead one toward some possible prediction of what might happen as a result of one's actions. Keynes spends a great deal of time discussing his proposed principle of indifference, which he insists must define the approach to solving any problem where there are equal degrees of probability. It's also worth noting that since Keynes is actually writing about mathematics and not economics, that he states in part 2 of his book, Fundamental Theories, that the method he employs throughout this section is derived entirely from Bertrand Russell's Principia Mathematica. In the real world of the science of Kepler, Leibniz, Gauss, and Riemann, what Keynes is engaged in is not science, not economics, and not really even mathematics. It is Fortuna, that is fortune, the goddess of fortune. Take away all the bows and ribbons, and what is left is the gambling theories of Galileo, Girolamo Cardano, and Abraham de Moivre. What is revealed is that the economics of Keynes resembles nothing so much as John Law at the gambling tables of Venice's Ridotto. Nothing is known for certain. It is all chance. It is all about money. Before turning to Keynes's career, it's useful to delve a little further into the question of the occult. Keynes and others of his type deserve no respect, not even of the type of I know he's wrong, but he's very intelligent. Let us dispense with that nonsense. On July 13, 1936, at Sotheby's auction house in London, John Maynard Keynes submitted the winning bid and took possession of a remarkable trophy, a metal chest full of Isaac Newton's private handwritten papers and lab books, almost 300 years old, most never published. Keynes was shocked to discover that the chest was stuffed with writings by Newton on black magic, the transmutation of gold, and various occult practices. Subsequent to that discovery, it has come to light that Newton was devoted to the occult for the entirety of his adult life, and that this pursuit of his became a near obsession in his later years, precisely at the time he was both Master of the Mint for the British Crown and simultaneously engaged in a ruthless campaign to libel and destroy Gottfried Leibniz. All of this occurring in the wake of the 1688 Glorious Revolution, which led to the creation of the predatory Anglo-Dutch Empire. Newton had spent decades in the pursuit of the philosopher's stone, a delusory occult substance, allegedly able to turn base metals into gold. Newton translated the Emerald Tablet from Latin into English, a work by the mythological Hermes Trismegistus, which purportedly held the secret for transmutation of metals. What is most revealing is that in the Newtonian view, as expressed in the Leibniz-Clark correspondence, as well as in such other things as Newton's concept of action at a distance, what is put forth as a science is the hermetic occultism of the Emerald Tablet. Molding a homicidal mind. From the moment that he entered Eton at the age of 14, Keynes was placed on a fast track for service to the British Empire. After a brief stint at Cambridge in 1906, Keynes joined the civil service as an official in the India Office. At the conclusion of World War I, he was appointed financial representative for the Treasury to the 1919 Versailles Peace Conference. During this period, he was also admitted as a member of what he called British cosmopolitanism, that is, the subservience of nation states to supranational British monetary power. That's the key to it. The idea that the British can rule the world by having the monetary power over all nation states. In his 1911 book, Keynes, supposedly an economist, ignores all of this. Famine and starvation are never mentioned. Science, living standards, and education are never mentioned. Indian leaders demanding freedom from British oppression are never mentioned. Instead, his topic is the reform of the Indian currency and banking system so as to integrate Indian finances more fully into the London-based global financial system to make India a more functional and subservient member of the British monetary empire. This was always Keynes's singular focus. In 1911 with India, in 1919 at Versailles, in 1933 with the crisis of the British pound, and in 1944 at Bretton Woods, defending and furthering the functioning of the power of British imperial monetary interests. In his presentation to the November 3rd, 2018 LaRouche PAC Manhattan meeting, Will Wirtz spoke about Keynes's admiration for Nazi Germany. Keynes was also a passionate proponent of eugenics. He served as director of the British Eugenics Society from 1937 to 1944, as late as 1946. Shortly before his death, in his Galton lecture to the Eugenics Society, Keynes declared eugenics to be the most important, significant, and I would add genuine branch of sociology which exists. All right, well, we read that quote in the other article. The Greek god Prometheus defied Zeus and gave mankind fire and science. The modern-day proponents of Keynes, such as Yanis Varoufakis and Bernie Sanders, have only proven by their worship of Keynes and their loyalty to a British Malthusian green agenda that they prefer groveling servitude at the feet of the London-based Zeus. Okay, the London-based Zeus. And the idea of collapsing all of this, 30,000 years in Asimov's foundation to 1,000 years at the price of going through a period when everything is run by oligarchs and cartels and national business relationships. This idea is a Fabian idea that comes directly from these, self-absorbed British pseudo-intellectuals, the same people that will come up with a pseudoscience like eugenics, just because it helps them shape the world in such a way that pleases them. That is what it is said in the famous Fabian window at the London School of Economics. You see them with a big hammer, and they've got the globe all heated up from the forge on the anvil, and they're going to hit it, and they're going to shape it exactly the way that pleases them. That is their idea of what the future looks like. It all starts here with A Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and it moves forward to the works of Huxley, Aldous Huxley, Julian Huxley. There's the famous picture right there, and above and between the two figures, you see the emblem of, and that is the wolf in sheep's clothing in the shield there, and FS, Fabian Society. They're sneaking up on us. They're taking over our institutions, our banking system. They are going to be imposing, like that turtle, in subtle ways, but persistent, never stopping until we have lost every bit of our freedom. That's the fight we're engaged in today. It's us against the Fabian Society and their current legacy, whatever they call themselves today. That is the deep state. That is the enemy. Thanks for being with us tonight. I will be back tomorrow night with Andy's preparing a special slide deck for us to commemorate my visit down to the MacArthur Memorial. And I've got some great photographs and some video to show you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So look forward to seeing you then. Good night, everyone.